Everyone, thank you for being here today. We are going to do notes on lesson 6, which is comparing and ordering numbers. So first thing I want you to do when you get your paper is to put your name up top. And then we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, right? So when we were first starting our number lines, we kind of talked about comparing integers. So if that was pretty easy for you, then this will be good review. And if you are still struggling a little bit, I hope that this kind of answers some questions that you still have. So first things first, we will go through what a positive number is and what a negative number is. So a positive number is a number with a value that is greater than 0. Right? So that means more than. A negative number is a number with a value that is less than 0. Right? We've kind of been talking about that when we've been plotting integers on our number line. So when you go left, you're getting less. And when you go to the right, you're gaining, right? So you're getting larger or greater than. So we are going to kind of review our number lines. So horizontal means we're going to be going from left to right, right? So left to right, right? Which makes sense because we just kind of talked about if you move to the right, you're going to gain. And if you move to the left, you're going to lose, right? You're going to lose some value. So the further to the left a number is, the smaller the value of that number is. So we'll read the sentence together. The further to the left a number is located on a horizontal number line, the smaller the value. Okay, so let's do an example. So if I have -1 here, and I'm comparing it to -8. -8 is way further down that line than -1, right? So that just shows the further I went to the left, the smaller my number got, right? So if I had -1 here, and I went this way though, the larger my number gets, right? So the further you move to the right, the larger the value of that number. Okay? And if you need to highlight to kind of remember some important things, we could do left, you're going to get smaller. Right, you're going to get larger. Okay? And then let's kind of talk about our vertical number line. Okay? So vertical, if you have a hard time remembering, means up to down, right? So we're not going left to right anymore when it comes to vertical number lines. So the closer you are to the top of the vertical number line, the larger the value of that number. So if you kind of think about this, if I have this horizontal line here, and I chose to kind of just flip it, it's going up is essentially the same as if I was moving right. Okay? So then the closer you are to the bottom of the vertical line, what do you think the value is going to be? It's going to be smaller, right? So if we go over here and we look at our vertical number line, I'll zoom out a little bit. If I am at, let's say, -3, and I go 4 spaces up, so I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. I now have +1. So I was originally at -3, and now I'm at +1. So I grew in value, right? And if I'm at -3 still, and I move down 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm now at -7. And -7 has a smaller value than -3, right? Okay. Let's move on to page 2. Okay, so this one's us to practice ourselves. So we're going to practice comparing some integers ourselves. So this says you can circle or highlight the value that is greater. So for the time being, I will highlight them. So we have 2 and 6. And if we wanted to draw a number line, let's say I have 0 right here. I'm going to count by 2's. So I have 2, 4, and 6. If I move now to the left, I'm going to have negative numbers. So I have -2, -4, and -6. Okay, so let's plot our numbers, right? So we have 2 and we have 6. So I know from the first page, they said the further to the right, the greater the number. So if I was to look, -6 is further down the number line, right? So that value, oh, where's the highlighter? So that one, 6, is greater. Okay? I'm going to erase this number line so then we can do the next one. All right. We have 12 or -12. So if I have a number line, 0's in the middle. Let's say I have 12 somewhere over here. I'm going to have -12 on the opposite side. So let's plot. So we have -12, -12 and 12. Okay, which one is further to the right? Because -12 would be going to the left, but +12 would be going to the right. So I know that this number is the larger value because it's further to the right. Okay? All right, let's do our next number line. We have -9 or -6. So let's draw our number line. Let's say 0 is like right here. -6 is going to be here. And -9 here. I'm going to plot my dots. Okay. When it's talking about further to the right, so that means like getting closer to 0 or going past 0, right? So essentially, -6 is 6 units to the left, but -9 is 9 units to the left. So 9 is going further to the left, which means that -9 is a smaller value than -6. So -6 is the integer that is greater, right? Okay. We have 2 or -5. We'll do our little number line again. We got 0, 2 over here, -5 to the left of 0. Okay. One of these numbers goes to the right on the number line, and one of them goes to the left. So remember, the greater value is going to be to the right, which would be 2. So 2 is my one of greater value. Okay. -4 or -10. So if I'm looking at my number line again, I want you to try to do this one on your own. You're going to draw your number line. You're going to have 0. And then negative 4 is going to be plotted before you get to negative 10. So negative 10 is further to the left, which means it's smaller. And we're looking for the one that is greater. Okay? 0 or negative 7. This one might be a little tricky, so let's draw it out. Here's my number line. I got 0, and I have negative 7. I'm going to plot my dots. Okay. Negative 7 is moving to the left from 0. So it is less than 0. So 0 is the one that is greater here. Okay? All right. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try to do A, B, C, and D by yourself. Okay. So, if we were, whoopsie, I'm trying to add pink. There we go. So, if you did A, B, C, and D by yourself, we're looking for the value that is less this time. We don't want the one that is greater. We want the one that is less, which means that closer to 0, moving more to the left. So for A, you should have gotten 4. For B, you should have gotten negative 2. C, you should have gotten negative 8. And D, you should have gotten negative 5. Okay? If you're a little confused at this point, you can raise your hand and I will come around and help you. All right. So now we're going to talk about the signs we use, which these I'm hoping are signs that you have already used. So, the sign right here, we'll do less than. We'll stick with the pink thing. So, less than is pointed to the left. And that's how I remember it. That's how I've always remembered it. So if your little beak, right? So here's the beak. If it's pointed to the left, it means less than. And then over here, whoopsie. And then over here, let's do blue. Okay, so now this sign is pointed to the right. Okay, so the beak now, which here's my little beak, it's pointed to the right, which that means this is going to be more than or greater than, is how you could read that. And then this one right here, we've seen this symbol before. This means equal to. Okay? So, little side note down here. When you have an absolute value, you must evaluate the absolute value before comparing the numbers. So what this is saying, this word evaluate means solve. So you'd have to find the absolute value first before you can even compare the numbers. Okay? So we're going to practice comparing the numbers with absolute values. And remember, we've talked about absolute value before. So let's make a little checklist over, I'll do it over here. So the first step is we are going to have to solve the absolute value first. Then we can compare. Those are our steps. Now, I also want you to remember, we've talked about absolute value before, right? An absolute value is a distance. So absolute value is always going to be positive. So absolute value is always positive. Okay? So let's try. Let's try these 3 or 4. So first one we have is 2. I need to solve the absolute value of 2, and I need to solve the absolute value of -5. So if I was to go on a number line, right, 2 is 2 units from 0. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. -5 is 5 units from 0, right? So we moved 5 units to get there. Doesn't matter if we move to the left or right. We just moved 5 units. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. So really, I'm comparing 2 and 5. And I know that 2 is less than 5. So I'm going to use the less than symbol. So my little beak, or my L, is going to point towards the 2 because it is less than. Okay? Here we go. Let's move on to the next one. We have the absolute value of -8.2 and the absolute value of 8.2. Okay, so if I was to have my decimal number line, I know to get to -8.2, I'm going to move 8.2 units. And I know to get to positive 8.2, I'm going to move 8.2 units. Well, if I'm looking, 8.2 and 8.2 are the same number. So 8.2 is equal to 8.2. Right? Okay. So now I have -10 and I have -45.3. So if I'm looking at values, to get to -10, I have to move 10 units to the left, right? But I'm still moving 10 units. To get to -45.3, I have to move 45.3 units, right? So really I'm comparing 10 to 45.3. And 10 is less than 45.3. Okay. Let's practice them together. We're going to practice how to kind of say it in words. And this will be the last part that we are going to do today. And then we will get kind of part 2 of these notes after this. So this says that we are going to write a complete sentence with either less than, greater than, or equal to. And then we need to write out how you would say it out loud. Okay? So 3 is less than 4. So I'm going to point my beak towards 3. And to write that in, I'm going to zoom in. So to write that in words, you would say 3. Oh, what row? That might be too big. 3 is less than 4. Right? Because if we're speaking it out loud, that's how we would say it. All right, next we have -5 and 9. Well, -5 is to the left of 0, and 9 is to the right of 0. And I remember from the beginning of these notes that the further right you go, the greater the number. So 9 is going to be greater than -5. So I'm going to point my beak at -5 because -5 is less than 9. So let's write that in words. -5 is less than 9. All right. I have 8 and -8. Oops. There we go. So if I plotted 8, positive 8 on the number line, it's to the right of 0. If I plotted -8 on the number line, it is to the left. So -8 is less than. So how I would read this, though, would be 8 is greater than -8. Okay? Next, I have -7 and -9. Now, if you need to draw a number line to help you, let's do that real quick. Here's my 0. Here's -7. Here's -9. -9 is further to the left. So this value of -9 is less than, right? So if I was to write this, I would write -7 is greater than -9. Okay, so we're going to write that into words. So -7 is greater than -9. All right, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to do E, F, G, and H by yourself. And then we will go over the answers together. Okay, so welcome back. Let's go through these together. So -10 is less than -2. And to write that, I would put -10 is less than -2. Okay? Now, for F and G, you have to solve that absolute value first before you compare them, right? Because if I look back here, we have to solve and compare first before we can compare them. So, the absolute value of -3 is 3 because you move 3 units. And the absolute value of 6 is 6. So really, I'm comparing 3 and 6. And 3 is less than 6. So I'm going to write 3 is less than 6. Okay? For G, we have the absolute value of 5, which would be 5 because you moved 5 units. And we have the absolute value of -9, which would be 9 because we moved 9 units. Okay, 5 is less than 9. So to write that, I would write 5 is less than 9 because I'm talking about the value of the number. Is it smaller or is it larger? All right, last one. I have 1 and 0. And 1 is greater than 0. So I would write 1 is greater than 0.